Hi guys, welcome to this week's first webcast. Today we're going to be talking about integument, or skin. First thing I want to mention is that skin is an organ. Skin is an organ. It has all four major types of tissue, which is epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nerve tissue. So skin is an organ. It's got 5 to 6 layers, depending on if you're looking at thin skin with 5 layers or thick skin with 6 layers. The first is the dermis, shown all the way deep here. It's the deepest layer of the integument. The next one's the stratum basale, shown here. Stratum spinosum, this next layer. Each layer is separated by these red lines. Stratum granulosum, up here. And the stratum corneum, up top. We've skipped this stratum lucidum because it's only found in thick skin. That's the layer that's going to vary between the two. And I don't have it diagrammed here, so we're going to skip talking about that. The last 5 layers listed, or last 4 layers shown, are part of the epidermis, or above the dermis. Epidermis, above the dermis. I'm going to hop right into talking about each layer here. Just copied and pasted that same figure from above, and we'll go through it. First layer, most deep layer, is the dermis. This layer is vascularized. It's innervated. Here I've shown a nerve fiber coming into contact with a Merkel cell in the next layer. And it's connected to the epidermis. By a basement membrane. Remember, a basement membrane is going to connect epithelial tissue to the tissue below. So it's connected to the epidermis by loose areolar connective tissue, or basement membrane. That's the dermis, the most deep layer. Hopping on to the next layer, we have stratum lucidum. I'm sorry, the stratum basale. Got way ahead of myself there. Stratum basale, or basal layer. Stratum basale. Here we're going to see multiple cell types. First is going to be the keratinocyte. Containing keratin, or later on will contain keratin and pre-keratin. We have next shown melanocyte. The melanocyte shown here. Now what this is going to do is secrete melanin. It's going to secrete it both, melanin granules, secrete it both at the body here, and then also these projections which I've shown, weaving in between all these cells. And that melanin is what's going to contribute to the pigment of your skin. The pigment. So, secretes melanin. And these melanocytes are about 10 to 25% of the cells found in this layer. The next one is Merkel cells. So I've drawn in purple. And these are innervated cells. So if they're innervated, they're going to be transducing sensory information to your nervous system, and that information is going to be mechanosensory, sorry for my handwriting again, or it's going to be able to feel pressure, and it's also going to be osmosensitive. So it'll be able to detect changes in osmolarity. I'm going to hop onto the next layer here. Stratum spinosum, or spiny layer. It's called that because these keratinocytes, during preparation, post-mortem, shrink up and they look to have spines coming out of them. But that is simply an artifact of the preparation of the tissue. It's not actually shown here because that's not how it is inside your skin. So that stratum spinosum, or spiny layer, is how it's going to look under a microscope after it's been prepared on a slide. And what this has are bundles of intermediate filaments between them. Bundles of intermediate filaments. Intermediate filaments, which is one of the 3 types of cytoskeletal filaments, called prekeratin. Intermediate filaments called prekeratin. Keratin is their intermediate filament that you learned earlier, part of the cytoskeleton. And I forgot to mention that the reason that it gets that spiny look during preparation is because it's held on to many desmosomal connections. Has desmosomal connections, so it's going to be really strongly held together. Desmosomal connections. That's what helps create that spiny look during preparation. And it has Langerhans cells. Langerhans with an S on the end. Cells. And your book refers to them as dendritic cells. Dendritic. The T. Cells, because of the projections that come out of it. What these are phagocytic immune cells. A phagocyte is a type of cell that engulfs an intruder. So that's how that takes care of intruders into the body, through phagocytic engulfing. And keratinization begins here. Keratinization begins. And the keratinization is what makes your skin tough, what makes it a good barrier for the outside of your body. The next layer, hopping forward, is the stratum granulosum. Stratum granulosum. Stratum granulosum. Whoa. Or the granular layer. What it's going to do is secrete 2 special types of granules. 2 granules secreted. And these are still keratinocytes here. These are still epithelial cells. But the 2 granules secreted are going to be, first, keratinohyaline granules. Keratinohyaline. Hyaline granules. And these are responsible for promoting cross-linking. Promoting cross-linking of keratin, which is going to help make your skin tough again. And also hydration. Promote hydration. The other type of cell, which gets secreted as the cells move toward the stratum corneum, are lamellar bodies. Lamellar bodies. And these contribute to the hydrophobicity of skin. Contribute to hydrophobicity. Or it's what makes your skin less permeable to water. You don't want your skin to be sucking up all the water it comes in contact with, or you'd burst. So these lamellar bodies secrete both lipids and proteins that help contribute to the hydrophobicity. Next layer, last note here is that cells lose their nuclei and organelles. And you can imagine if they lose their nuclei and organelles, it's when they become dead. So as they move forward, they're secreting these 2, or move superficial, I should say, secreting these 2 granules and losing their nuclei and organelles. The last layer is the stratum corneum. The stratum corneum. And this is just a layer upon layer of dead cells. Stratum corneum. The only thing I want to point out here is cells are no longer viable and are sloughed off readily. No longer viable. Last thing I want to point out here is a little bit better diagram of the relationship of the epidermis to the dermis. On these diagrams I have the dermis being very small at the bottom, but in fact it is a much larger layer of your integument than the epidermis. And I've also diagrammed where the stratum lucidum comes in here in thick skin. So this is an extension of the stratum corneum shown here. In thicker skin it's much, much thicker, and below that you have the stratum lucidum. So that's where that lies, in the epidermis and thick skin. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys again in a few days.